Welcome to the deep dive. Have you ever looked around at our incredibly wealthy, technologically advanced society and just wondered why foundational things feel so broken?
Yeah, things like getting basic health care or, putting your kids through school.
Exactly. Or why, despite all this supposed progress, just navigating your daily life can feel like like a low-level, constant state of anxiety.
Right. It's a very common feeling right now.
It is. And today we're exploring a fascinating framework that attempts to answer those exact questions. We are jumping into excerpts from a book called Third Wave Capitalism: How Money, Power, and the Pursuit of Self-Interest Have Imperiled the American Dream.
Written by John Ehrenreich.
Yes, John Ehrenreich. And it's a really compelling read.
It really is. It tries to connect a lot of the dots we all feel, but maybe can't quite articulate in our day-to-day lives.
So the mission for our deep dive today is to unpack the author's core thesis. He argues that starting around the 1970s, the United States entered an entirely new phase of capitalism,
A shift that fundamentally altered the American dream.
right? Moving society away from the concept of a shared public good and steering it directly toward hyper-individualism.
And maximizing corporate profit at all costs. I mean, that's the core of it.
But before we really get into the weeds here, I do want to make a crucial note to you, the listener.
Very important point to make up front.
Yeah. The source material we're working with today contains very strong, politically charged critiques. Ehrenreich goes after capitalism, he goes after corporate practices, and he calls out both left-wing and right-wing political figures.
He really doesn't hold back on anyone.
He does not. So we want to make it absolutely clear right up front that we are not taking sides here.
Right. We are not endorsing these viewpoints.
Not at all. Our goal is simply to act as your impartial guides, helping you understand the fascinating arguments and the historical framework the author lays out in the text.
That's a great distinction. Our job is just to synthesize the information and help you see the patterns he's pointing out, regardless of where you might fall on the political spectrum.
We just want to look at the machinery of his argument.
Exactly. Let's look at the mechanics.
So let's start with that machinery and unpack the timeline. The historical context here is really helpful. Ehrenreich maps out American history into three distinct waves of capitalism.
Starting with the first wave.
Right, industrial capitalism in the 19th century. So we're talking railroads, steam engines, the rise of massive factories.
Then in the 20th century, we moved into the second wave, which is corporate capitalism.
And that second wave is what a lot of us probably still picture when we think of the American economy.
Oh, definitely. It was the era of mass national markets, automobiles, radio, and eventually the New Deal social safety net.
You had a dynamic where the government actually stepped in quite a bit.
Yeah, they managed the economy, regulated industries, and tried to protect workers.
There was a general, if imperfect, consensus that corporations had at least some obligation to their communities.
Right, the post-World War II social compact. But then we hit the 1970s.
The 1970s. And the author argues that things shifted dramatically into what he calls the third wave.
So what exactly happened there to trigger a whole new era?
Ehrenreich points out a few massive structural changes that mark off this third wave from the previous era. First, you get explosive globalization.
The rise of multinational corporations.
Exactly. They create globally integrated supply chains, shifting manufacturing wherever labor is cheapest.
Okay, that makes sense. We're pretty familiar with that shift.
But second, and this is a really interesting one, there's a dramatic rise in giant nonprofit organizations.
Wait, when we say nonprofit, I usually picture, my local animal shelter or a community food bank.
Right.
How does that fit into a massive capitalist shift?
It's a great question because the term is a bit misleading in this context. Ehrenreich isn't talking about local bake sale charities.
Okay.
He is pointing to massive entities like sprawling hospital networks and huge universities.
I see.
These institutions might have a nonprofit tax status, but they actually operate very much like massive, aggressive, for-profit businesses.
That's a huge distinction.
They account for about 10% of U.S. employment today and generate over $2 trillion in annual revenues.
$2 trillion. That's wild. So you have these global supply chains and these mega nonprofits. What else defines the third wave?
The third defining characteristic is a major ideological shift, that post-war social compact we mentioned.
Where businesses felt an obligation to workers and towns.
Right, that really began to break down. It was replaced by an ideology of intense free market worship and extreme individualism.
The focus shifted almost entirely to maximizing shareholder value above all else.
Okay, let's pause on that. because this leads into an economic concept the book introduces that was a massive light bulb moment for me.
Rent-seeking.
Yes, rent-seeking. It completely reframes how you look at wealth in the modern era, but it sounds a bit academic.
It does sound like an economics textbook.
Can we break that down? Explain it like I'm 5.
Let's use an analogy. Traditionally, you might think of wealth being generated by creating something new.
Like making a product.
Right. Think of it like building a new bridge that connects two towns. You made trade easier.
You created value.
You created value. Rent-seeking, as the author defines it, is totally different. It's accumulating wealth not by creating new value, but by using power, policy manipulation, and monopolies to grab a larger share of the wealth that already exists.
So, using the bridge analogy, rent-seeking would be what? Setting up a toll booth.
Exactly. You didn't build the bridge.
I didn't make the cars.
You didn't improve the road. You just used your political influence or your monopoly power to set up a toll booth right in the middle of a bridge everyone already relies on.
Wow.
You're extracting a fee from everyone driving by without adding any actual value to their journey.
And Ehrenreich argues that third-wave capitalism is defined by this kind of naked redistribution of wealth.
Moving it from those with less power to those with more.
And what's fascinating is how the boundary between the government and the private sector essentially dissolves to make these toll booths possible.
Right, because in the third wave, massive corporate profits don't just happen in a vacuum.
They rely heavily on the state.
The state and the private sector become intimately cozy.
You see it in government subsidies, in corporate bailouts, outsourcing of public services.
And in favorable tax codes that are literally written by industry lobbyists.
We see the privatization of things that used to be strictly public.
Like prisons, military logistics, and infrastructure, all handed over to for-profit companies.
The system excels at turning public needs into private rent-seeking opportunities.
And when you talk about private companies capitalizing on public needs, turning basic human survival into a rent-seeking opportunity.
There is no more glaring example in this book than the American healthcare system.
It really is the ultimate case study for Ehrenreich's thesis.
The book makes a pretty shocking claim about our healthcare spending compared to our actual health outcomes. How big is the disconnect?
It's staggering. Americans spend roughly $2.9 trillion a year on healthcare.
$2.9 trillion.
That represents over 17% of our entire gross domestic product.
Over 17%.
We spend far more per capita than any other wealthy nation on Earth, and yet we rank terribly among those same nations in basic metrics.
Terribly?
In what way? We are 30th in infant mortality, lagging behind countries like Greece and Poland. Our life expectancy is lower than many nations that spend a fraction of what we do.
Wait, but shouldn't a hospital's fundamental goal naturally align with making people healthier? How does the book explain that massive disconnect?
Ehrenreich introduces the concept of the medical-industrial complex.
Okay.
His argument is that the U.S. healthcare system isn't primarily designed to produce health at all.
Then what is it designed for?
It's a quintessential third-wave system designed to extract profit.
Ah.
It's a tightly woven web of for-profit companies, massive nonprofit hospital networks.
Whose CEOs often pull in millions of dollars a year, by the way.
Exactly, along with pharmaceutical giants, insurance companies, and government funders like Medicare and Medicaid.
There's a historical statistic the author brings up that genuinely made me stop reading and just stare at the wall for a minute.
About where our health actually comes from.
Yes, the public health data. The research shows that 85 to 90% of our historical improvements in health.
Things like living longer, surviving childhood, wiping out massive plagues.
Right. 85 to 90% came from public health measures, not medical treatments.
That means the vast majority of our extended lifespans didn't come from a doctor's office or a hospital bed.
No, they came from municipal engineering and social policy.
Clean drinking water.
Modern sanitation and sewer systems. Better nutrition, reducing extreme poverty, child labor laws.
And later on, campaigns like anti-smoking initiatives.
Preventative or therapeutic medical practice is responsible for only about 5 of the additional 30 years of life expectancy we've gained over the last century.
Only 5 years.
But if you look at where the money goes today, almost none of it goes to those foundational public health measures.
Because you cannot easily patent and sell clean air.
Right. You can't charge a premium for poverty reduction.
So the medical-industrial complex pours almost all of its money into high-tech, incredibly expensive, individual medical treatments.
Because high-tech treatments generate billable revenue.
They are the toll booths on the bridge.
That is what drives the system.
If you've ever stared at an itemized hospital bill and wondered why a single generic painkiller cost you $50, this rent-seeking concept is exactly why.
And the realities of the pharmaceutical and insurance industries perfectly illustrate this. The examples Ehrenreich provides are just frustratingly relatable.
The pharmaceutical industry is a prime example. You constantly hear the argument that drugs are so expensive in the U.S. because of the massive costs of research and development.
The R&D excuse.
Right. But the data shows pharmaceutical companies often spend vastly more on marketing, advertising, and administration than they do on actual R&D.
For example, the book points out Amgen spent $5.2 billion on marketing and administration in 1 year.
Compared to what for research?
Just $4 billion on R&D.
And they charge Americans vastly more for the exact same drugs than they charge Europeans.
A basic diabetes drug that might cost a couple of bucks in Europe can cost 8 or 10 times that amount in the U.S.
Let's look at how the basic research for many of these blockbuster drugs is actually funded too.
Ehrenreich highlights a hepatitis C drug that costs about $84,000 for a single treatment course.
$84,000.
Yes. But the foundational research for that drug was largely funded by the National Institutes of Health.
Meaning it was funded by taxpayer dollars.
The public paid for the foundational science.
You and me.
Then, a drug company swooped in, bought the patent, put in a fraction of the final development cost, and reaped billions in exclusive revenue.
That is the essence of rent-seeking.
And we see a similar shift in the insurance industry. Health insurance originated as mutual aid community funds.
People literally pooling their money locally to help each other out in times of unexpected sickness.
But in the third wave, they transformed into something entirely different. They became massive corporate entities.
And if your goal is to maximize premium revenue and satisfy shareholders, your incentive is to minimize payouts.
You do that through high deductibles, complex copays, and entire departments dedicated to denying care.
The author even points out how this system literally medicalizes normal life to create new markets.
Yes. Normal human experiences like natural aging, everyday sadness, or young boys just being highly active kids are increasingly categorized as medical diseases.
It feels like you can't just be tired on a Tuesday anymore without
a pharmaceutical commercial diagnosing you.
telling you that you have midweek fatigue syndrome and need a $400 pill for it.
It's humorous, but it's a real strategy. It's not necessarily about curing a root social cause.
It's about creating brand new, billable treatment markets.
Suddenly, there's a pill for everything and a profit to be made from every normal aspect of the human condition.
So if the system is designed this way for healthcare, we have to look at other foundational pillars of society.
Which brings us to the author's analysis of the American education system.
This is probably one of the most contentious topics in the entire book.
It really challenges the dominant narrative. We are constantly told that American public schools are failing.
That students are falling terribly behind.
And that it's a national crisis requiring immediate, drastic intervention.
Right, you can't turn on the news without hearing about failing schools. But according to Ehrenreich, this entire narrative is a manufactured fraud.
The data he presents to back this up is quite striking. He points to the National Assessment of Educational Progress.
The NAEP scores.
These are widely considered the gold standard for tracking student achievement over time in the U.S.
And what do they show?
If you look at those scores, reading and math performance has actually gone up over the last 40 years, not down.
Gone up.
In 1990, only about 13% of fourth graders met proficiency in math. By 2013, that number had climbed to 42%.
Furthermore, high school and college graduation rates are at historic highs.
Okay, but what about that skills gap we always hear about?
The idea that our schools aren't producing enough educated workers for modern tech jobs, so we're falling behind globally.
Ehrenreich argues that's also largely a myth. The book cites data showing there's actually an oversupply of STEM graduates.
Science, technology, engineering, and math.
Right, an oversupply of those graduates for the available jobs in the market.
An oversupply. I feel like tech companies are constantly saying they can't find enough talent.
That's the narrative. But U.S. colleges were graduating roughly 115,000 STEM students a year, while only about 105,000 new STEM jobs were being created.
Yet, tech companies continually lobby the government for more work visas to bring in hundreds of thousands of foreign workers.
Ehrenreich suggests this lobbying isn't about a true lack of skilled American workers.
It's a rent-seeking strategy to increase the labor pool and keep wages down.
I see what you mean. It's like if test scores are actually up, graduation rates are up, and there's no massive skills gap.
Why do some schools genuinely look like they're struggling? Because we know some districts are in really tough shape.
The book points to the real culprit, and it isn't bad teachers or lazy administrators. It's poverty.
Ehrenreich argues that the achievement gaps we see are overwhelmingly caused by out-of-school factors.
Childhood poverty, food insecurity, lack of consistent health care.
Housing instability, and the sheer toxic stress of living in deeply under-resourced neighborhoods.
Which makes sense. If a kid comes to school hungry and slept in a car the night before, a new standardized test isn't going to fix their reading comprehension.
Precisely. And the United States has one of the highest child poverty rates among industrialized nations,
But here is the critical data point. U.S. schools with low poverty rates.
meaning schools where fewer than 25% of the kids come from poor families.
Right. Those schools actually rank at the very top internationally.
The score is high or higher than students in countries we usually idolize for education, like Germany or Finland.
So if that's true, if the overall education crisis is essentially fake, and the real issue in struggling schools is just unaddressed poverty,
Why is there such a massive, incredibly well-funded push for school reform?
why are billionaires and politicians constantly pushing for charter schools, incredibly strict standardized testing, and tying teacher pay to those tests?
Ehrenreich provides a cynical yet fascinating answer.
Just like in healthcare, it's about turning the massive $1 trillion public education sector into a third-wave profit engine.
The reformers are creating an educational industrial complex.
By declaring that public schools are a fundamental failure, you create the political justification to privatize them.
You invent a crisis so
Yeah.
you can sell the solution? And the extraction of profit here is wild once you look at the mechanics.
It's incredibly lucrative. Standardized testing companies make billions of dollars, not just developing the tests, but grading the tests, analyzing the data.
And then turning around and selling the specific curriculum designed to pass those exact tests.
And then you have the charter school movement. While many charter schools are technically classified as nonprofits, the book shows how they often funnel taxpayer money into for-profit management companies.
These shadow companies charge the nonprofit school exorbitant, unregulated fees for real estate rent, administrative services, and curriculum licensing.
And we have to look at how this impacts the workforce. The text frames the intense political attack on teachers' unions and the push to end teacher tenure not as a genuine educational strategy to help kids.
But as a classic third-wave tactic, how does breaking a teachers' union help someone extract rent from the system?
By breaking the unions and removing tenure, you deregulate the labor force.
You can replace older, experienced unionized professionals who demand fair wages and benefits with much younger, lower-paid non-union workers.
These younger workers have very little power to push back against administrative demands, larger class sizes, or poor working conditions.
It's a deliberate strategy to lower overhead, privatize a public good, and extract rent from the education budget.
The book brings up what happened in New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina, and it's such a stark example of this.
In the wake of the disaster, the entire public school system was effectively closed and replaced with a nearly 100% charter system.
They replaced thousands of veteran unionized teachers with younger non-union teachers making significantly less money.
And yet, despite all the promises of reform, years later, the district still ranked near the very bottom of the state in performance.
It really makes you rethink every headline you read about disrupting or reforming education.
If we pull back and synthesize the big picture here, John Ehrenreich's book offers a profound, unifying lens through which to view our modern society.
Through the framework of third-wave capitalism, we can view the intense, everyday frustrations of modern healthcare and education not as unfortunate accidents.
They aren't just mere inefficiencies, and they aren't the result of simple bureaucratic incompetence.
Right, they are the logical, intended outcomes of a specific system.
It's a system that excels at turning basic public needs, like the fundamental human right to be healthy, or the civic necessity of educating our children, into private toll booths.
The system isn't broken. It's working exactly as it is currently designed to work.
To generate wealth for those positioned at the top of these complexes.
And this is why it's so crucial to connect this broader macroeconomic theory to you, the listener, and your daily life.
Whether you're staring at an outrageously high health insurance deductible and wondering why your coverage keeps shrinking while your premiums go up,
Or you're reading a headline about failing public schools.
or you're just feeling a general pervasive anxiety about the economy.
This framework offers a powerful way to understand why the system operates the way it does.
It gives you a vocabulary for the frustration.
Even if you don't agree with every single aspect of the author's politics, the structural patterns he outlines are incredibly revealing.
It completely shifts how you interpret the evening news, political debates, and your own monthly bills. You start to see the invisible rules of the game being played all around you.
And we want to leave you with a final provocative thought to mull over long after this deep dive ends.
We've just explored how the boundaries between public service and private profit have become almost entirely blurred in deeply personal physical areas like our health and the minds of our children.
So if they can financialize and extract rent from our bodies and our classrooms, what else is next?
Think about the other foundational aspects of your daily life. What about the very digital infrastructure you rely on to communicate, to work, and to exist in the modern world?
Or the physical public spaces in your community?
Are those areas quietly being restructured right now, right beneath our noses, by the invisible rules of third wave capitalism?
It's definitely something to keep your eyes open for.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.